Hello and welcome to a new episode of Spin the Wheel. I'm your host, Wheelchair21, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about the things I binge part 2. But before we get into that, I would like to briefly address probably some of the ill timing that had occurred with last week's episode. I think I made a few distasteful remarks towards Yoshimitsu Banno, the director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, when I mentioned my distest or disliking for Godzilla vs. Hedorah, the film. Now, when I record these episodes, I normally record them on Sunday or Monday. The episode was not intended to be a jab at the man's death. That was totally not what I had intended. And at that point, it was done. It was post edited. It was scheduled. And during that time, it went up. It was nothing to be distasteful. I think I even wrote in the description, nothing was intended. And I even clarified that on the Los Inglenables podcast. Completely poorly timed. I just did not frickin' know. And it was a shocker to me, probably Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, that I was like, oh, hey, this is not good. Now, I don't think I said anything too bad. I think I just said that it's a movie that got him taken off of Godzilla practically indefinitely, and that's about it. Anyways, like I say, today's episode is about the things I binge part 2. We're going to be talking about Super Sentai and Power Rangers. So it's probably best to start off with Power Rangers straight up and talk about it. So I've been a fan of Power Rangers since practically Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I grew up mostly with season 2 and season 3 and had to watch a lot of the reruns of season 1 during the course of like the first couple of years, as well as I didn't ever get to see the entirety of season 1 and season 2 or season 3 until the Power playback when they were bought by Disney on ABC Family. That's when I finally was able to see like every single episode there was. Now, the funny thing about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is I do enjoy it. It is a special place in my heart. It's not entirely my favorite series, but it's one of my series that I do actually binge quite often. Now, the thing is, I don't actually binge like the entirety of MMPR. It's one of the many seasons that I'll probably pick up and watch from episodes to episodes, but never in a straight chronological order. Like, I can't just pick up the series and watch it start to finish. Normally, I like to watch the series around episode 43 to like the beginning of season 2. Now, this is the weird reason, and people are probably going to get pissed at me, but I have a weird like love and fascinations for everything considerably Jew 2 material. I don't know if that's still the canonical term for it, but fans still like to call it the Jew 2 era. Now, I personally love it. I don't know why. I think I just love that most of those monsters were made into action figures at the time. So because I had a representation of those figures on screen, I enjoyed, having my Megazords and my Fliphead action figures constantly fighting them. Now there are a few hit and misses in those series, or I should say in those episodes of the series, but it's not that bad. Now, once I get to season 2, I actually kind of stop right around the Song of Guitardo. Like, I don't watch from there all the way on to like White Light. So I take like a break from White Light. I go all the way up to like the Power Transfer Part 2. Then I take a break. For some reason, I watch Rocky Just Wants to Have Fun. But if anyone's seen some of my other podcasts, I mentioned that Rocky Just Wants to Have Fun was actually the first Power Rangers VHS I had outside of Day of the Dumpster. And then after Rocky Just Wants to Have Fun, I on occasion watch The Weddings parts 1, 2, and 3 all the way to the beginning of season 3. Now, season 3 is actually one of my least liked seasons. And I don't know why. I think it's because I didn't like how the series was too completely overarching. And I thought that it was a lot of like forced stuff. Like they just kind of made every event in that season seem like it only took place in the course of probably 2 to 3 months, even less than that. Whereas all the other seasons seems to be like after every episode, there is a constant passage of time. Whereas season three was like, hey, we want to just get to Zio, so we're gonna try to cram like a 30, 40 episode season and make you feel like you've watched only 2 months of their lives go by. Because there was some kind of narrative going on that they wanted to keep the kids in high school for as long as they could during the first two seasons, and then by the time they got to, season three and Zio, they were like, maybe we should start considering having them go through their senior year because their actors are getting more noticeably older, where you could tell they should be in college. And that was kind of the one thing I do like story wise when they finally got the turbo, was that they were like, we're leaving school, but we have jobs at the school, which didn't really hurt the show necessarily. But I'll get to that at a later episode when I actually want to talk about the pros and cons of Power Rangers Turbo, because that is a discussion all of itself. So, like I said, I normally watch actually A Friend in Need all the way to the Ninja Quest, and then normally I will watch Changing of the Zords, and I think Different Shades of Pink and Master Vile and Metallic Armors. Like, I'll watch the direct like multi-parters from that season, but I will avoid for like the life of me the entirety of like the, I guess, fillerish episodes, people would say. Whereas Alien Rangers, I think I don't watch it at all unless I'm like trying to do some research on like a subject, like like the timeline of how they got the Zeo crystal, or how like certain things happened when it came to them changing the time backwards, because it gets confusing and ridiculous. And then when we get to Zeo, I watch that thing like to death. Like, I have VHSs of it where my dad recorded it for me off TV. I watch it on Netflix. I just watch it. It doesn't matter which version, if it's on my own homemade VHS or, straight off like Netflix. There are only like 4 episodes from Zeo I naturally like hate for a passion, and it's like episode 5, 8. I want to say the Christmas episode is like 23, or is it 29? So the Christmas episode and the one episode I skipped over is actually Trust in Me. Now, that's kind of weird, I know, for a lot of people, but I don't really like that episode. That deals with Rocky and the weird monster and his blind girlfriend. I never really liked that episode. I don't know why. I don't know. It was weird. I didn't like that episode and like two of the weirdest episodes early on within the first 10 episodes. But most of Zeo, I'm like, this is like some good shit. And then Turbo, I barely touch it. I go right to space. On occasion, I'll go right to Galaxy. I'll go to Lightspeed Rescue. And now sometimes, like, I'll just do a mix and match of the two seasons together. I never sometimes really watch them in their entirety, but I do try to from time to time. And Time Force. Then I kind of skip Wild Force, go right to Ninja Storm, Dino Thunder, because who can really hate those shows? Then I skip SPD, I go to Mystic Force. Now, I don't really hate SPD, but I don't really like it either. And it's mostly due to the fact of like the first 10 or 15 episodes, which were just copy and pastes of Deca Ranger done poorly. But like I said, I go to Mystic Force for some reason. I really enjoy that show. A lot of people hate it, but I loved it. Then I skip Operation Overdrive, I skip Jungle Fury, I skip RPM, and I skip pretty much everything up till now. Like, when it comes to Power Rangers, I like a lot of the Zordon era, or I like a lot of the original Saban era. And then when it comes to Disney, I only like really 3 seasons to binge watch and enjoy. And then I, like I say, just pick up my ball and I throw it into the next hoop, which is Super Sentai. And now Super Sentai is one of the craziest things, because I kind of picked up that, the shows had to be Japanese in some shape or form due to the fact of how, like, watching Godzilla and having seen Ultraman on TNT kind of clued me in with how, like, there's different filters and grain effects, and how most of the Japanese footage all seems to look alike, even though they're different studios to some degree in some regards. So I kind of started figuring it out, and then by Gal Ranger, I truly, definitely realized it because I missed that weird episode where they tell you Power Rangers is actually a Japanese show. That weird lost episode hosted by Johnny Young Bosch, I think David Yost, and not David Yost, Austin St. John and Walter Jones. Like I missed those episodes, so I never kind of really knew that until Wild Force with Gal Ranger. Because the thing that clued me in was the fact we didn't get the elephant. Like halfway through the show, I was trying to figure out when the elephant was getting released, and because of me searching for the Wild Force power animal, I found Gal Ranger's power animal line, and I went to get an elephant and yada yada yada, and eventually I didn't get a freaking Gal elephant till like 2 years ago for like $20. I just lucked out. I got one, and I'm glad. So I knew about Sentai from Gal Ranger, but I didn't get to actually get a hold of episodes to torrent or to download or to stream, say on YouTube, till about actually YouTube's creation. I think at the time, most of the Sentai I saw were like small videos from fan sites and, people that were trying to catalog the events for those who couldn't get the episodes or didn't know how to find the episodes. So it was around Bokenger when I started watching, and I watched it through YouTube and Crunchyroll because, like I've told people before, Crunchyroll used to be all about like a YouTube narrative for, I guess, the otakus and I guess to a degree weeaboos because there were a lot of AMVs at there, Linkin Park and Naruto and Linkin Park and Dragon Ball Z. But you get the gist of it is that it was a consortium like YouTube where you could upload anything Japanese. It meant you could upload any anime, any J drama, any toku until they were hit with copyrights, and then they became a legal service. Where it streams and simulcasts and hosts dubs and that of certain shows or movies. So there, like I said, I watched a lot of Sentai, watched a lot of Ultra, which we'll talk about in another episode. But the thing that hooked me the most was a lot of the 90s Sentai that Power Rangers were adapted from, and some of the late 80s Sentai that really caught my eye. Honestly, the first one to really grab me in was Die Ranger, because I was watching Jew Ranger, but then I noticed after doing research there's Die Ranger and there's Kaku Ranger to explain the Thunder Megazords and, the Ninja Megazords. So what I did was I would watch a couple of episodes each day. Like I would watch the first 6 episodes of Jew Ranger, then take a break. Then the next 6 episodes were Die Ranger, and then Kaku Ranger. But I was watching it, I saw all these other, older Sentais that I was still really unaware of at the time because, they were not adapted. And I saw Gatchaman. Not Gatchaman. I saw Jetman, and I automatically went with, it's Gatchaman. This thing looks a lot like Gatchaman. And it even says it's sort of attributed to the popularity of Gatchaman and this and that. And then I was like looking at it, and I was reading up some notes. I was looking at um, the alien suits, the kaijin, and what stuck out actually was I didn't get into Die Ranger until not Die Ranger until Jetman until I got into Die Ranger, and I was watching and the Jin episodes occur, and I was like, who's this guy? And then I like did some research about Hirose, and it said he's also in Jetman, so that really piqued my interest. So I watch Jetman now. I binge like the entirety of Jetman in one night because I found it more interesting than Jew Ranger and almost on par, but even better than Die Ranger. It depends on the episode. It depends on where you're at in the season, and I was hooked. So I watch a lot of the Jetman to Die Ranger arc. Kaku Ranger, it's a it's a refined taste. You gotta like it. You gotta enjoy it. You gotta understand it, but you don't always have to like binge it. And then like O Ranger, I watched, but like I haven't been able to binge it in years, and even then it was raw. So who knows if I actually like the narrative and the story? I know a lot of people right now are not liking it, but I at least liked the difference that it had in the show than it was in Zio. Now it's probably not the greatest of seasons, not the best written of seasons, but I just liked it for just being different at the time, and I think that was just me being a young, teenager, young adolescent, that it just liked different and just was okay with anything tokusatsu. Because hell, you're talking to a guy that like watched almost everything but the Tomoko Rescue series. Then, as time goes on, the Mega Ranger was finished, and it actually took me a while to get into Mega Ranger. I don't think I got into Mega Ranger until like the halfway point of the series. And the funny thing is now, why did I skip from O to Mega? There were no Car Ranger subs. They were like raw, and they were in patches. Like you had the first two, then you had like the last, then you had like maybe like 15 to 20, then you had maybe like 28 to 34, and then you had like the last three episodes. It was just terribly patchy, just like O Ranger was. Like they were only missing 4 or 6 episodes, but Car Ranger was like redunculous on what it was missing. And so I didn't really binge those. I watched Mega Ranger, didn't put on my binge list. It's not that it's a bad season, I just at times didn't think it qualified the Jetman Die Ranger criteria. Skip along. There was not really any Ginga Man subs, nor were there really any Raws. No, barely any Go Go 5. And we get to Time Ranger and Gal Ranger, where I'm like, please God, is there a fan subgroup out there that has this done yet, and why haven't I found it yet? It probably is, and I'm just not looking in the right places. But Time Ranger and Gal Ranger, I rewatched those series when I first got a hold of them, probably 4, 6 times, and I've enjoyed the series. I've just liked them, and then kind of for some reason, Hurricane or Abba Ranger didn't have subs for a while. Deca Ranger, I watched it, enjoyed it. Actually liked it more than SPD, which is astonishingly weird. We get Magi Ranger. I'm indifferent on Magi Ranger. I love it. I hate it. It's weird. It's preference. We get Bokenger. Bokenger's up there in my top tier of binging. I don't know why. I love that season. It's great, and it's kind of crazy. Like Bokenger, Geki Ranger, I like but don't watch. There's Go Under and Shinkenger. I binge those all the time. And then after Shinkenger, my interest in Sentai kind of dips where I watch it, but I rarely go back and enjoy it until we had Koyuger and um, Juoger. And it's not that I don't hate those. It's not that I hate those seasons in between those times, but it was just like a bit of my interest in Sentai kind of skewed, and I don't really know why. Now, why would I recommend though Jetman, Die Ranger, Gal Ranger, Time Ranger, Bokenger, Shinkenger, and Go Under as like really good seasons? They just feel well written. They have a lot of action, a lot of story, some drama, and I feel like for the periods they're written for, like they're probably some of the best out there. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, "Well, why don't you mention Gokaiger?" And I feel like Gokaiger's just a dirty, guilty pleasure for me. I'm very indifferent on Gokaiger. I like the action, I like the choreography, I like the cameos, but I just thought the story could have been better. But that's why I have Bokenger, because that's a way better anniversary series, nevertheless. And so is Zyuohger, technically, even though it's not really an anniversary series. But when it comes to Power Rangers and Sentai, there is at least somewhat of a similarity between the two seasons. Like if I like or really enjoyed its American counterpart or have some nostalgia to it, I normally will like its Sentai counterpart, which is usually the case if you're dealing with 90s Sentai. Whereas 2000s, it's actually like if I like it in America, I might actually hate it in Japan, and if I love it in Japan, I'll probably hate it in America. And it's probably the weirdest thing I've had since practically Gal Ranger to now, and that's one astonishing factor. Like there are series in there that I honestly do hate with a passion, and there's series in there that I still like, but they're just missing something for really getting me hooked. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just the overall enjoyment that I receive from the shows that make me do it. Binging is like a required taste, or I should say the series you binge always is like that, because I just honestly can never tell in which way I want to watch a show or how I want to do it, because sometimes you can always just mix and match a series. There's so many, overarching stories. There's so many multi-parters, even in Power Rangers or Sentai, that you can easily just be like, I want to watch all of the main meat and potato episodes and then go on to the next season. And you can do that and it won't even hurt you. I mean, I've done that a lot with mostly Space all the way up into Wild Force. I don't know why. Like, I've done that several times in some cases where I watched the entirety of the series just based on its, I guess, like I said, meat and potato multi-parters or things that leave some consequence to the overall plot. Because in MMPR, there isn't really a plot. There's no real narrative except the basic good versus evil, and there isn't really one in Zeo, and there kind of isn't one in Turbo, and then it just kind of all appears that there's space and on that we have to have you know, an end game for these seasons. And I thankfully have to thank Saban and his team for sort of adjusting the series to be a lot more like its, counterpart in Sentai, where each new season is a reboot, so you can have a proper ending. However, I am still one of those guys who still also enjoys the idea of carrying over a cast for maybe one or two seasons and then getting rid of them because it helps to build your universe. However, I don't think they can truly budget it nowadays. Anyways, for the things I binged, this was part two, Power Rangers and Super Sentai. Next week is either going to be Kamen Rider and Ultraman, or I'm going to have it just be Kamen Riders by themselves because it is a very nitpick subject.